They called him Titus Invictus, Titus the Unconquered, and for 10 years, that name was a title carved in blood and respect across the entirety of the Roman Empire. He was not merely a gladiator. He was a legend, a god of the arena who had never taken a step back, never suffered a loss, and whose very presence guaranteed an imperial victory. Hey friends, welcome. I'm Marcus. Another incredible gladiator story for you today. Let me know where you're watching from, and please hit that subscribe button. Let's get started. At 32, his strength was the subject of countless Roman poems, and his coming retirement, after one final symbolic fight, was anticipated by Emperor Antoninus himself. Titus was fighting for the greatest prize, his freedom and the restoration of his name, stripped from him years ago when he was falsely condemned as a traitorous centurion by the ruthless Senator Valerius. But that morning, Titus's perfect, invincible world was about to collide with a world of silent darkness. Chained deep beneath the cheering Colosseum crowds was a woman whose eyes held no sight, but whose mind saw a future so terrifying it threatened to undo the mighty foundations of Rome itself. She was Lyra, a blind seer, condemned to face the beasts not for a crime, but because her visions threatened the dark secrets of the same powerful man who had destroyed Titus's life, Senator Valerius. No one in that roaring arena knew that their champion was about to abandon glory, wealth, and freedom to protect a silent, terrified woman whose only defense was a doomed prophecy. Titus Invictus was about to learn that true victory was not found in the sand, but in choosing love and justice over the perfect record he had spent his life earning. Lyra, though only 24, had endured more pain than many centurions twice her age. She was the daughter of a revered Greek oracle, raised on the philosophy of Athens and the ancient worship of the Fates. Her talent for seeing the flow of the future was a gift admired by her people, but it became a terrible curse when the Romans swept through her homeland. She and her father were captured, sold into slavery, and eventually purchased by Senator Valerius, who sought to exploit their supernatural insight for political gain. Lyra's father was tortured and executed when he refused to twist his prophecies to the senator's will. Lyra, however, proved more difficult to silence. Her visions of Rome's immediate future, visions of drought, fire, and political upheaval caused by Valerius's greed, terrified the corrupt politician. Rather than kill her and risk an ill omen, Valerius had her physically blinded. He believed that extinguishing the light in her eyes would extinguish the visions in her mind. He was terribly wrong. Losing her sight only intensified Lyra's gift. She saw the threads of fate more clearly than ever, navigating the darkness of her cell with a terrible certainty of the doom approaching the city above. For years, she had survived by pretending to be a simple, useless blind slave, cleaning chambers and enduring constant humiliation. But the visions did not stop. They spoke of a great darkness closing in on Rome, a catastrophe that could only be averted by a single, powerful act of sacrifice from a man whose hands were stained with blood, but whose heart was clean. Lyra knew the time was near, but how could a blind, powerless slave girl find such a man when all she could feel was the cold chains of her impending execution? Valerius, knowing her final catastrophic prophecy, had condemned her to die a public, agonizing death, hoping to silence the truth forever. Titus's fight that afternoon was a magnificent, brutal masterpiece. He faced 4 elite gladiators simultaneously, men who were intended to test his limits before his final, celebrated retirement. But Titus fought with a distant fury, his mind already far away, wrestling with the political machinations required to finally clear his name and marry the emperor's niece. He wanted his honor more than his life. The crowd was deafening, the sand soaked red, and Titus stood alone at the center of the arena, his 4 opponents fallen, his perfect record intact. The roar was immense, confirming his status as the greatest hero Rome had ever known. But the noise meant nothing to him. As he was escorted through the winding, damp tunnels beneath the arena for his ritual cleansing, Titus was led past a forgotten cell block reserved for the day's executions. There, in the dim light, he saw her. Lyra was chained to the damp wall, her head bowed. Her face, though marred by faint scars, held an ethereal calm, but her body trembled violently. Her eyes were milky white and sightless. Titus stopped. He was a man who had faced lions and armies without flinching, but the sight of this fragile, abandoned woman, radiating palpable terror, yet holding an inexplicable dignity, chilled him to the core. "Woman, why are you here?" Titus asked, his voice accustomed to giving commands, though he spoke softly. Lyra flinched, recognizing the sound of authority, the sound of power that only brought pain. "I am sorry, master," she whispered, her voice like broken glass. "I meant no disturbance." Titus knelt by the bars, ignoring his guards. "You are condemned to die by the beasts. What is your crime?" Lyra raised her sightless eyes, and though she could not see him, she sensed the powerful, honorable spirit before her. A flash of blinding, horrifying fire crossed her mind's eye. "My crime, Invictus," she said, using the name only the crowd spoke, "is that I see what your Roman eyes cannot. I see the shadows that surround you, the great lie that took your honor, and the coming fire that will devour this city. And the man who condemned me is the same man who destroyed you." Titus was frozen. The air was thick with ancient power and sudden truth. If you enjoy these Gladiator stories, subscribe to the channel. We share new stories every day. Do you think true courage means protecting the innocent, even when it costs you everything? Tell us what you think in the comments. Lyra's revelation hit Titus with the force of a battering ram. The realization that Senator Valerius, his political rival, was not only responsible for his own dishonor, but was now silencing a woman who saw the truth, galvanized him. His goal was no longer freedom. It was justice. Titus moved with ruthless efficiency. Using his immense wealth and the political favors owed to the empire's champion, he did not just buy Lyra's freedom. That would be too easy to revoke. He arranged to purchase her as his personal property from Senator Valerius, who gladly accepted 10 times her market price, believing he was simply moving a useless blind slave out of sight before her execution date arrived. Valerius laughed, unknowingly handing his own ruin to his enemy. Titus moved Lyra to his magnificent villa, a place of luxury she could only perceive through scent and sound. But she was not there as a slave. "You are not my property, Lyra," Titus told her that night, his voice gentle as he secured her in a safe chamber. "You are my guest and my shield against the darkness. Your visions are the only truth left in this city. Tell me what you see." Lyra, accustomed to cruelty and abuse, recoiled from his gentleness. She did not trust the voice of a powerful man. "Why?" she asked, tears running down her scarred cheeks. "Why protect me? You risk everything you earned in the arena." "Because," Titus replied, kneeling before her, "I have spent 10 years fighting for a false sense of honor. You are the embodiment of the truth I lost. I cannot see the future, but I can still fight the battles of the present. I am your eyes. You tell me where to strike." A deep, desperate trust began to grow between them, built on shared pain and the common enemy they faced. Lyra's visions became their tactical map. She described the shadows, the colors, the sounds of the coming catastrophe. And Titus used his centurion's mind to connect them to political actions. Over the following months, their bond blossomed into something profound and unexpected. Lyra, blind yet seeing, and Titus, the physical champion, formed a perfect unit. She found in Titus the only man who truly listened to her, who valued her mind above her appearance, and whose honor was as pure as she had envisioned. Titus discovered in Lyra a soul that had survived crushing darkness, yet retained the capacity for wisdom and compassion. They spent hours together in his private study, she describing the abstract visions, he translating them into solid Roman action. Lyra's latest vision was horrifyingly specific. The great aqueduct will crack, the grain stores will burn, and the mob will turn on the Senate. Led by the golden serpent of deceit, Titus realized the devastating truth. Valerius, through his control of city maintenance contracts and grain imports, was deliberately creating the crisis. He was hoarding supplies, planning to profit immensely from the impending chaos, even if it meant the deaths of thousands of Romans. The serpent is Valerius, Titus stated, his eyes blazing with the centurion's rage. He is preparing to cause a famine that will bring Rome to its knees, all for gold. My perfect record and my freedom mean nothing if I stand by while this happens. Lyra reached out and placed her hand on his scarred cheek. You must expose him, Titus, but to touch Valerius is to invite the wrath of the entire Senate. You will lose your freedom and your life. Is the city worth your sacrifice? Titus looked at her, his expression tender. If I save the city, I save you. That is all the worth I need. To learn the ending of this story, subscribe and turn on notifications. Tomorrow, we have a new Gladiator story. Thousands of subscribers follow these stories daily. Join our community. Senator Valerius finally realized his mistake. He discovered that Lyra was the source of Titus's sudden, dangerous inquiries into his business dealings. Desperate to silence the blind Seer and destroy his enemy's credibility, Valerius manipulated the political system. He issued a warrant for Lyra's recapture, condemning her once more for corrupting the people with dark prophecy, and ordered Titus to return her immediately, under threat of being stripped of his freedom and executed for treason. The crisis came on the day of Titus's official retirement ceremony held in the Senate. Valerius, smiling cruelly, presented Titus with an ultimatum. Present the slave Lyra for execution, and you will receive your full freedom and all the honors due to a hero. Refuse, and you face the executioner yourself. Titus looked at the senator, then at the Emperor Antoninus Pius, who sat uncomfortably watching the political theater. I refuse, Titus declared, his voice echoing through the chamber. This woman is innocent. She is a seer of truth, and the one guilty of treason is Senator Valerius, who is planning to destroy Rome for profit. Valerius laughed, demanding Titus's immediate death. The emperor, unable to ignore the charge of treason, but unwilling to execute his champion, proposed a trial by combat. Titus would fight not for his freedom, but for Lyra's permanent, unconditional pardon and safety. His opponent, Valerius's most lethal bodyguards, two men known for their brutal efficiency, with the proviso that Titus fight unarmored. If I die, Lyra dies with me? Titus asked. No, Lyra whispered, stepping forward, guided by her senses. If he dies, I swear by the gods that I will use my last breath to curse this Senate and bring down the prophecy upon your heads. His sacrifice must count. Impressed by her courage, the emperor conceded. Titus would fight. If he won, Lyra walked free with full Roman citizenship. If he lost, only Titus would die. The battle that followed was fought not for glory, but for foresight. Titus fought like a man possessed, dodging blows with inhuman speed. Lyra stood beside the emperor, quietly speaking her visions to Titus's loyal slave. The shadow moves left. The light is behind him. Titus, with no armor but Lyra's guidance, fought the battle of his life. He took a grievous wound to his side, but with a final roar, he struck down the second guard. He had 1.R channel has hundreds of Gladiator stories. Subscribe to access them all. If you liked this story, subscribe because even better stories are coming. Titus had won, but the cost was nearly fatal. As he collapsed from blood loss, the emperor, moved by the combined courage of the Gladiator and the Seer, immediately declared Lyra a fully free citizen of Rome and ordered the arrest of Senator Valerius. Lyra, though sightless, rushed to Titus. She knelt beside him, using her ancient knowledge of herbs and healing her true secondary talent to stabilize his breathing and stem the flow of blood. Her hands, guided by instinct, saved the life Titus had so freely offered to sacrifice. Titus recovered, his invincible record broken by the severe wounds, but his honor restored far beyond any political pardon. He and Lyra became the most powerful force for justice in Rome. Titus, as a free man, exposed Valerius's corruption, saving Rome from the planned famine. Lyra, the blind seer and healer, became a revered consultant to the emperor, ensuring that the government's actions were guided by foresight and compassion. Not greed that they married, not in a political alliance, but in a quiet, humble ceremony, a true union of spirit and purpose. Titus became the protector of Rome, Lyra his guiding light. Their legacy was not one of conquest, but of conscience. Their story proved that the greatest strength is not the ability to fight without losing, but the courage to risk everything you have to protect what is truly priceless. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe and hit the bell. We have new Gladiator stories every day. Subscribe so you don't miss them. Subscribe, like, and share your thoughts about how the perfect warrior found his greatest purpose not in fighting for glory, but in becoming the eyes for a blind woman whose wisdom saved an entire empire.